If you've been trying to buy a house this year, you're probably pretty tired and really hoping that the next year is going to bring some relief. Unfortunately, looking at forecasts and trend reports, it doesn't look like that's where we're headed. In particular, don't expect housing prices to drop in 2022. A lot of people have been struggling to buy homes in 2021. It has been an absolutely brutal market for buyers. And while 2022 might be a little bit watered down, it's mostly going to be more of the same thing. To dig in a little bit more, let's talk to my colleague Holden Lewis, who's been covering the mortgage industry for more than 20 years. Hey, Holden. So something I've heard is that in 2022, even though home prices are going to continue to go up, it's maybe not going to be as bad as it was this year.
Well, could it be any worse? I mean, home prices went up something like 20% this year. When you're talking, say, October to October, that's just unsustainable. You can't keep home prices from rising that fast forever. So, yeah, most people, they expect home prices to moderate next year, maybe somewhere in the range of, I don't know, like 5 or 6%.
So that's still a pretty decent clip. We're not looking at a housing bubble that's about to burst, right?
No, we're not going to have we're not in a housing bubble. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Like back in 2005, I'd been following mortgages and real estate for about 6 years by then, and I thought we were in a housing bubble, and all these experts said we weren't. Well, we were. Now, I don't know. I hope I'm not one of those experts who's not seeing what's going on, but I kind of doubt it. We're just not in a housing bubble. We're in a different situation from back then. Essentially, there's just so many more people who want to buy houses than there are available houses, and that's just driving up prices.
Right, because inventory has remained really low over 2021.
When you look at the number of homes sold versus the number of homes for sale, and you divide those basically, and you get the month's supply. So let's simplify it. Let's say there's 1 million homes for sale in one particular month and 500,000 homes are sold. So it would take 2 months to sell all the houses on the market. Well, a balanced market is like a 6-month supply. So like if 500,000 homes are bought, that would mean you have 3 million homes for sale, right? Well, so that's kind of balanced. Lately, it's been like 2 months, even less than 2 months supply. What that means is that sellers have this huge advantage in negotiating. They just know that they can basically ask for anything and they're going to get offers.
Even if it moderates for 2022, we're not looking at a major swing, right?
No, because they're just not building enough houses. This disparity between supply and demand will be satisfied when enough houses are built. That's not going to be in the next year or two. That's going to be 10, 15 years from now. I just don't think that you're going to see home prices go down. Eventually, they'll slow down. They might even plateau for a while when supply and demand are roughly equal. But that's not happening anytime soon. I'm interested in what you've heard when you've talked to real estate agents. Are you hearing people say something like, "Hey, people would like to sell their houses, but they're afraid to buy"?
I think that that's certainly part of it. I talked to real estate agents from across the country, both buyer's agents and listing agents. And, a really consistent refrain is just how difficult it is to be a buyer in this market, that there's so much competition. There are so many people for each home that's actually for sale. And so it wouldn't be surprising if not wanting to become a buyer in this market is something that's keeping current homeowners from selling. Because otherwise, to look at it, it's a great time to sell a house, right? Home values are really high. You're getting multiple offers. You've got people, waiving contingencies, offering, more than the asking price. But if you sell your home, you need somewhere else to move to. And that is kind of where the problem lies, right? That, unless you own multiple homes or you're combining households, moving in with someone, you're then going to become a buyer. And at this point, people know that it's been tough out there for buyers. And so there's a lot of reluctance, even though with home values being so high, it would seem like a great time to be a seller.
Yeah, I keep thinking about that. I have to remind myself. I think, oh, wow, home prices are up so much. People are going to really, really feel that urge to sell while they can, while they can get a really great price. And then I remember, oh, right, they have to find a place to live. And that's going to be really tough because no matter where they go, they're going to be paying what feels to them to be elevated prices. People are going to look at what prices were like 2 years ago and say, this is madness. There's just no way I want to pay that kind of price. So I'm just going to stick around, stay in my house instead of selling it.
It's not just your high-end markets. It's not just coastal markets. It's not just urban markets. Really all across the country, we're seeing this pattern of very few homes for sale, a really large number of buyers, and buyers willing to take some pretty aggressive steps in order to have an offer accepted on a home. And so something that I've also really gotten a sense of from talking to agents and from talking to, recent homeowners and people who are trying to buy homes is that buyers are getting really, really frustrated with the current market.
Right. If you're a prudent buyer, you're getting frustrated both at the sellers and the competing buyers for essentially kind of, driving the standards down. The standard is you get an inspection, in normal times. Well, we're not in normal times. And in some markets, for some homes, the standard is, no, you're not going to get an inspection, which just seems foolish to me. I can understand the desperation of people, but wow, to buy a home without an inspection. Gosh, I would get an inspection for a brand new home.
Every real estate agent I ever speak to says they would never advise, a client to waive the home inspection. There are people who are willing to do that, right? There are people who are willing to waive all kinds of contingencies in order to get an offer accepted. That creates an environment where not only do sellers have the upper hand, but buyers are frustrated not only with sellers, but also with other buyers, right? Because having people in the market who are willing to cover an appraisal gap with cash, or who are, not going to ask a seller to really do anything, are making it that much harder for people who are saying, this is a huge purchase and I want to, be sure about things. I don't want to buy like a lemon. I'd feel comfortable if I had these contingencies. And we're just not, seeing that.
Oh, and we've forgotten to talk about mortgage rates because they've been really low all year, but they started rising in September. And, when we look at Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the Mortgage Bankers Association, and the National Association of Realtors, they're all forecasting mortgage rates to rise in 2022, a little bit more than half a percentage point, basically. And that might drive some people out of the market. And certainly there's going to be people who say, like, let's say they're looking at $340,000 houses and mortgage rates go up. And they're going to say, okay, well, I'm going to have to start looking at $300,000 houses or $320,000 houses. So there's going to be a lot of disappointment.
Right. Because even though, we're still looking at rates that are probably below 4%, that's still historically quite low. And in the scheme of borrowing money, it's a quite a good interest rate. But at the same time, if you're using a mortgage calculator and figuring out what your monthly payment's going to be, those fractions of a percentage add up, right?
Okay, I bought my first house in 1997, and we thought we're getting a pretty good deal on an 8.25% interest rate. So something to keep in mind that they have been a whole lot higher, and for many, many years they were like above 6 or 7%. So even if they're 3.75% at the end of 2022, that really, in a historical perspective, is really good. Mortgage rates are almost certainly going to go up. Of course, house prices are going to keep going up, but that might mean that there's less competition out there just because there are fewer people who are searching for houses. It's really harsh to say that the upside of people getting discouraged is less competition for the people who stay in the game.
Even with less competition, buying a house in 2022 is going to be pretty difficult. But what's important to remember is that it is possible, and you don't have to completely settle. And also, you shouldn't. Buying a home isn't just the biggest financial decision that many people will ever make. It's also your home. It's where you live. And so it needs to be a place that you can be happy and comfortable. Even though it's hard, it's not impossible. Sooner or later, the right home is going to come along and you're going to be ready for it. But that's only going to happen if when the punches come, you're able to roll with them, you're able to dust yourself off, get back out there. Hi, I'm Kate Wood, and I write about mortgages and homeownership for NerdWallet. If you want to read our entire 2022 forecast, head to the description of this video where there's a link to the entire story. And while you're down there, click like and subscribe to our channel.